Welcome back to the Blue Hour. This is our second recording session, third episode that is in person.
Yep.
And our last one for a little bit. It is December 11th, time of recording, and we are basically just going to spend this episode talking about recapping this year as far as AI, and then talking about what we think will happen next year.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
You got to rip us off with the year in review.
Yeah.
At least get us started, because I feel like I was later to the game and haven't used it as much, or I didn't use it as much in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Until much later, like May, June. And even then it wasn't like GPTs weren't available. I don't think I signed up for Plus until August.
So, you dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
January 2023. ChatGPT had been available, but only using the 3.5 model. So it was different. There was no paid version. There were a lot of people shipping products and startups and a lot of like OpenAI wrapper apps. It was like the big rage. And then relatively quiet until March when GPT-4, that was probably like the first really big announcement. That came out, and with that was ChatGPT Plus, and kind of like a new time for ChatGPT because GPT-4 could do a lot more. It's better at coding. It was better at reasoning. So basically better across the board, which was wild. And after that, I think Bing Chat launched, which is basically built on top of OpenAI. And then Bard launched, and then ChatGPT came out with plugins as a beta, and Bing browsing, and then later Code Interpreter. So just additions where you could search the internet, use third-party apps directly in ChatGPT, and then actually run code in it and like analyze files, which is wild. And then there's a bit of a lull, I'd say, throughout the year, or at least as far as the big guys. I mean, there's like announcement after announcement after announcement.
Yeah.
It was, there's been a shit ton of stuff that's happened. Basically, people jockeying to create things faster for, creating images, video. ChatGPT later on came out with GPT-4V, which was kind of even more recent, but like a vision version where, a lot of people are creating things that you basically live stream a video and then it describes what's happening. So there's a lot of things that are happening in that. ChatGPT came out with voice, so you can use voice in their app. Bard came out with, being able to use the Google Suite as plugins. I haven't seen a lot of people use that, but you can actually like create docs, update your calendar, send emails, stuff like that directly from Bard. Microsoft came out with like an enterprise Copilot, and they rebranded Bing Chat to Copilot. They put DALL-E in it. They have a plan to put a lot more into that. We'll see more, I'm sure, but it is integrated into their entire suite if you pay for enterprise or teams. So basically, like the big companies are all Facebook and Llama. I don't know. Why did you get in on this? Just let me go.
It's good.
Yeah. There's a lot that's happened.
Yeah, there's a ton.
What sticks out to you?
Yeah, a lot of also companies are raising, like smaller startups are raising money to build on top of this stuff. I know that there's some very niche things happening in the medical space and the legal space, and companies are raising without really much documentation on what they're building, which is interesting. Yeah. Kind of like a hype cycle is following the large companies, which is to be expected, but also definitely happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this year, fucking Microsoft invested $12 billion into OpenAI.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah. But even much smaller tickets than that. Yeah. Like, obviously, it doesn't get any bigger than that. But
so much money.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then there are these small, very lean companies that are deciding not to be bootstrapped and want to raise a ton of money to be able to potentially, I guess, like use things like JSTOR and different data sources and be able to pay for those subscriptions or negotiate those deals, I guess, with more leverage, or be able to hire people to be able to get more access to better data or larger data sets to be able to pull from. Like, JSTOR is specific to the legal realm, or that's at least what I thought of. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of copycatting. That Bard announcement last week that we discussed was sort of then we had spoken about that video, or maybe we didn't even mention
Gemini. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
or I don't know if we mentioned the video, but we
Yeah.
talked about Gemini for sure.
And then that video ends up being like a hoax. Apparently, like post production was done in serious like quantities, so it was not nearly as efficient or effective as people had thought based on that video, which is really interesting because then I saw an open source version this weekend that uses the API from ChatGPT 4 that can do every single function. So it's kind of funny, kind of ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's a lot like crypto, and that there's this there's just so much hype around really cool announcements, but also I think that there's a lot of talk and not as much actual practical stuff. Like, like even just going through X and using Grok to search for the way that people are using Code Interpreter, or the way that people are using a lot of this stuff, or building GPTs. There isn't that much information out there. There are definitely people building GPTs, but I don't know. I'm just a little bit underwhelmed. When you go on X, there's so much stuff. There's so much of people talking about what's going on, and it's usually the daily headlines, so to speak. Like there's very little, like it's very narrow focused on the daily on X, it seems. And I think that, I don't know. I think that there is this, especially with something like understanding how to best leverage it for whatever your specific use case is, whether it's data analytics or even just like making your reporting easier, which is something we've been talking a lot about. I think that there isn't that much practical stuff being shared on that, as much as it's a lot of opinion about AGI. I think there's been a lot of hype around people being scared, or at least saying they're scared, right? And but no one really knows, at least from a layperson perspective. I'd love to talk to somebody who really knows what they're talking about that. But other than like Ilya and Elon and Sam, like I don't really know that everybody has a strong, well-informed opinion about the actual security risks of AGI. I don't really know. It seems like everyone wants to have an opinion in the same way that everybody wants to have, 2 years ago, some NFT collection, I don't know. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. If you look at actual products that have shipped outside of like ChatGPT or Bard or Bing Chat or Copilot, or some of the I don't really dig into other products that much, just because my focus is all ChatGPT. But I'd say, from what I can tell, or at least people I talk to in my everyday life, there's not a whole lot of things coming out that are getting crazy users like the main ones.
Yeah.
When in reality, these main chatbots are cool, but they're not really the best. They're very broad. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't go as deep into something as most apps could. And I'm not seeing a lot of, like, this year's been cool. A lot of crazy stuff has happened. And all of the like people raising money without actually having a fully fledged product yet is crazy.
Definitely.
But it's like very early days for AI, it feels like. And it all happened very fast.
Yeah.
If in retrospect, like this year feels like it's been 3 years.
I definitely think it's more useful of a tech than something like crypto sort of proved to be, in my experience, just because, I have used Bitcoin to make actual physical transactions, but I'm a really, 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 that's not very common.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's anecdotal, and people think it's so unique that that's the case. It usually gets some eyebrow raises. If you buy a motorcycle with Bitcoin or whatever, like no one really goes, and unless you're in El Salvador or Bitcoin Beach or whatever, but which I haven't been to, but everywhere else it seems just hypothetical. So this, in comparison, though, I actually get utility from every day. Like I actually do get, it's very useful, and that's a really big distinction. I think that there's a use case in crypto for gaming, which makes sense to a certain extent. I've never been a gamer. That's, other than Crash Bandicoot as a kid, so it's very sort of abstract to me. But it makes sense logically, and then from a value store value, that also makes sense to me. But that's more, finance is such a sort of it's very intangible in certain senses, whereas this is actually literally helping to accomplish daily tasks. And that's not really necessarily like I use Google, which is like recall or fact finding, but it really is, for me, it's the ability to be more efficient with data analytics that I find the biggest use case for me personally. And I think that there are others too, but there still is a large problem with trying to make sure that there's context enough for it to be really good at what you want it to do. And it's not easy to reverse engineer how to be good at that. To do the prompt engineering component it sounds simple, and people love to say that prompt engineering, I don't know, people have opinions about it, but don't seem to really actually be trying it. I think that's definitely something that the experts like Andrew, the guy NG, I'm not sure that's his last name, but he definitely always harkens on the fact that prompt engineering is absolutely the best place to start in terms of understanding how to get the most out of these models. So I don't know. I do think it's a better or more, it's going to end up being a more impactful technology. Maybe that's a bad way to say it, but it's definitely something I use daily. Whereas, crypto, you can buy it daily, but ultimately in terms of the utility of it, it seems very abstract in comparison.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, it's not tied to like, I'm going to buy it so I can get rich.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it so that I can save time, be more efficient, do things I've never done before. I mean, I couldn't really code. I couldn't build an app before this year.
Yeah.
And now I feel confident I can build an app. I mean, I built an app with a product that gets, thousands and thousands of users and value. And it's something that I think people will realize. I think we're very early to realize that there's things that we can do with AI that we weren't able to do before. And I see that's maybe jumping to next year first, but that isn't going to be the minority opinion in a few years. I think people will finally figure out, and people will build products where people get use out of AI. And we already have a very mouthful, like savory taste of how crazy it's going to be when you could do 90% of your job in 10% of the time, and what that means for how we approach work, the things that we do, the ways that we spend our time. I think a lot of people figured out this year that there's value in getting the work done, not in the act of actually doing it,
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited for.
Yeah. It also kind of compounds on the COVID notion. Yeah. That's like in the office versus out of the office, and accountability and what work means. It's interesting. I think it definitely sort of like is a lot of gasoline on that fire.
Yeah. I mean, this year is like a huge step forward to, we talked about it yesterday, 2 days ago, that McDonald's was potentially testing out AI drive-through workers who take your order. That's wild. And that's something like a year ago, it would have been like, how would that even work?
Yeah.
A year and a half ago. And now it's like, oh no, that could work now probably, and might actually be better. And even though those people who really love their job at the drive-through, they have the opportunity to not have to work there and maybe find something else to do. And AI could help with that. I don't know. I don't think everybody who loses their job to an AI, like in a drive-through like that, is going to go try and work in AI, but they could.
Yeah.
And they should, there's more opportunities in new technology, which, I wasn't early to any other technological wave. And then just anybody who's involved now is like wildly early, because although it feels like there's a million things going on, and on social media, people like to talk and like throw out opinions, people just love throwing out opinions, but it's still so wildly early. Yeah. And anybody who's involved in it or using it now is well positioned for the next X amount of years, where being good at prompt engineering, talking to AI, figuring out how to do things that you want to do with AI that you couldn't do before, or that were harder to do before, just because of access to information and access to a partner to do that with. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, seriously. It's sort of reminiscent of, I remember learning Ruby on Rails 8 years ago, and it being presented as a step forward in the evolution of how to write code in a way that is very assumptive, and it doesn't require a foundational computer science degree that you needed to study for 4 years in classes to understand. Right. Whereas like a C# or even a Java, or even JavaScript to a certain extent, would require understanding of libraries and understanding of sort of the way that these files are actually architected. And with Ruby on Rails, when you just, I think it's literally create Rails in the command line after installing the libraries, and it'll create an entire web app for you with the model, the view, and the controller. And that, I remember sort of making me feel almost like I was cheating in the beginning. But then as you build things, you realize, wow, this is actually really great. And I don't have to be the foundation. I don't have to understand the infrastructure in order to be able to build a web app, which is very empowering. And this is another step in that. It's even like a massive jump in that, it feels. I'm sure that there are more assumptive languages than Ruby on Rails now. At the time, it was Rails 4. I think it's up to Rails 7 something now. So a lot of change there, I'm sure. And there have probably been newer models or newer languages and frameworks that are more assumptive than that example. But that's the last time I really got my hands dirty in coding. And then in this, it's just it's even more simple to do than ever before, because you just need to know how to write in English. I saw someone say that the new programming language, which is a lot of engineers will talk about that. Stack Overflow puts out an annual developer survey that's 50 pages and very detailed. And somebody wrote the new software language is English, because that's all you need to know in order to build the web app now. It's pretty amazing.
It is crazy.
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah. And until I talked about it more in earlier episodes, and I've talked to some people who actually are developers for their full-time job, where I was talking about building, and like you still need a lot of effort to go in when you're coding with it, but it's possible, like building, not really knowing Python that well, and then writing an app in 2 days that works really well.
Yeah,
it was very hard before this.
Yeah, my gosh, yeah.
You get instant access to answers, instant code generation. You can put errors in. It's wild. And I think anybody who speaks English is at a great advantage right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you think that the best thing, or the thing that you found most useful in the year one was in this first year was the ability to like 100x or whatever your software engineering skills?
Yeah, I think coding for me was the biggest. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah.
I can do things and build things and assess problems and get instant answers to questions, and actually build something that works really well and scales. Like being able to do that is such a huge advantage for $20 a month.
Yeah, exactly.
That skill is now $20 a month plus time that you spend on it, which is crazy. So yeah, how about you?
That's a good one. Yeah, I think I read a lot about people using it for writing, and I haven't found it useful for that really, honestly, myself. But I think it's because of the whole reason I want to get better at writing or to write is because I want to go through the struggle that is having to actually put pen to paper and write. And it's like I used an analogy not long ago that I wouldn't outsource the watching of a movie to somebody else. That's sort of how I think about writing with ChatGPT. It's definitely helpful in terms of writer's block and ideating and being creative. And I use it a lot speaking out loud for that reason. But in terms of the actual process of writing, I don't use it really for that. Although I thought I might when I first was reading about everything.
Yeah.
But for me, it's definitely about understanding and leveraging data better and using code interpreter. And that is definitely the majority of my use case. In everything professionally that I do, there's definitely data components that are the actual insights you can get are sort of obfuscated, and you have to kind of dig for them. And without knowing how to write Python, it had been a lot of Excel formulas and trying to understand how to calculate things well. And so I think for me, it's definitely been in the ability to use the Python that it creates and to ask in just normal English how to do and calculate certain things, and whether or not I'm calculating things correctly when I feed it a spreadsheet. I can ask questions of that. So it's pretty amazing. I don't think I'd be able to do a lot of like the CFO and accounting work without it. I think it would have been a much larger learning curve. Although, like you said, it still is a lot of work, and you have to be interested in it. Even prompt engineering, like when you're writing these GPTs and you're messing around on the back end with a configure, it's as frustrating as anything else that you really want to do, and it's not easy. So it's like not. Yeah. It's not like a layup.
I don't know,
but
it's not like what people would want it to be. Is like, I want this to work.
Yeah.
Instantly.
It's definitely not. Yeah.
No.
Which is okay. You know, that's why I think we're getting good at it.
Yeah.
Because you have to, practicing, but it is definitely not, it's not like, it's like butter, it's like, it definitely is a little harder than we're making it out to be potentially, but the goal, like the upside is unbelievably high. Like I literally wouldn't be able to do any of this without it. So it's worth the struggle.
I know, it's like you can, and maybe in the future it'll be easier, but you can, I think the key takeaway from 2023 is you can do so much more, but you still have to do a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to hold your hand, and you have to ask questions. It's not going to.
Yeah. Earlier
this year, a big thing was AI agents, and
yeah,
very early on at the time we were starting to talk about AI on here. Yeah. People wanted these autonomous agents that you give it one thing and it goes and does a bunch of different things for you. That is not there yet, nor will, I think we still have plenty of time until you can say, write blogs for the entire year for my company, and it just goes and does it. Yeah. Like, you need a lot more context, information, detail, and you need humans in the loop to make sure that things aren't messed up and that it's actually what you want. Otherwise, it's not there.
Definitely. Yeah. Agents are like, but I feel like we're right on the, like, to a certain extent, like when I'm building these GPTs, they are agents to a certain extent. Like I'm able to tell it that it'll, for this style of, when I type in the number 1 and I provide a spreadsheet, go through, provide me with these outputs specifically, and then summarize them in a chart, and also provide me with a new document with separating all the values into renewals versus net new. And then, for the renewals, or even the churn, which is a different spreadsheet, add rows where there isn't churn for days with zero values. That's a weird thing to have to explain and understand how to reverse engineer it to get it to do that. But once it starts to do that, it's pretty amazing that you literally just hit, if you do it properly, you hit the number 2, provide a spreadsheet, and then it spits out those outputs for you in a matter of minutes. It feels very agent-like to me.
Yeah, like it's doing actions on your behalf.
Exactly.
Like like smaller tasks rather than full.
Yeah.
Like go do a bunch of shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see the difference, but I definitely love the fact that I can automate it, which feels like that. When I first heard about what that could be, I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And I feel like I already have that. Yeah. I guess that my understanding, it was maybe sort of low level, but
yeah, I think that's what it should be. Yeah. I don't think people should be expecting that AI is going to take care of everything for them yet.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's better that way.
Yeah.